There's a reason why some leaders command immediate respect, while others beg for scraps of attention. There's a reason why certain individuals walk into a room and the entire energy shifts, while others fade into the background, despite their best efforts to be noticed. The difference isn't charisma, it isn't luck, it isn't even talent. The difference is something far more subtle and infinitely more powerful: strategic unavailability. 500 years ago, Niccolò Machiavelli understood this principle better than perhaps any political theorist who ever lived. While most people remember him for his ruthless pragmatism, they miss the deeper psychological truths embedded in his observations about power, influence, and human nature. Machiavelli recognized that the moment you appear too available, too eager, too desperate for connection or approval, you surrender the very thing you're trying to achieve. This isn't about playing games or manipulating people. This is about understanding a fundamental truth about human psychology that governs everything from romantic relationships to business negotiations to leadership dynamics. We are wired to value what seems scarce and dismiss what appears abundant. We chase what retreats from us and retreat from what chases us. But here's where most people get this completely wrong. They think strategic unavailability means being cold, distant, or artificially aloof. They think it means playing hard to get or creating false scarcity through manipulation. That's not what Machiavelli taught, and it's not what creates lasting influence or genuine respect. True strategic unavailability comes from having something more important to do than seeking other people's approval. It comes from being so committed to your own growth, your own mission, your own standards, that you're naturally selective about where you invest your time and energy. It comes from understanding that your attention is your most valuable resource. And like any valuable resource, it must be allocated wisely. Machiavelli observed that princes who made themselves too available to their subjects lost their authority, not because they were kind or generous, but because constant availability signals that you have nothing more important to do. It suggests that other people's needs, wants, and demands are more pressing than your own goals and priorities. It communicates weakness, not strength. Think about the people in your life who command the most respect. Are they the ones who immediately respond to every text, who clear their schedule for anyone who asks, who say yes to every invitation and request? Or are they the ones who are selective about their commitments, who have clear boundaries about their time, who seem to operate from a place of abundance rather than scarcity? The truth is uncomfortable, but undeniable. The more available you make yourself, the less valuable you become in other people's eyes. This isn't because people are cruel or shallow. It's because availability signals priority, and priority signals value. When you're always available, you're communicating that nothing in your life is more important than whatever someone else needs from you. But strategic unavailability isn't about being difficult or playing power games. It's about being genuinely busy with meaningful work. It's about having standards for how you spend your time and energy. It's about understanding that saying no to good opportunities creates space for great ones. Machiavelli wrote extensively about the importance of timing in political affairs. He understood that acting too quickly could signal desperation, while waiting too long could signal weakness. The art lies in finding the perfect balance between engagement and withdrawal, between accessibility and exclusivity. This principle applies to every area of your life. In relationships, the person who is always available often becomes taken for granted, not because their partner is ungrateful, but because constant availability removes the element of appreciation that comes from knowing someone chose to spend time with you rather than doing something else. In business, the consultant who responds to emails immediately and accepts every project that comes their way is rarely seen as an expert. Experts have waiting lists. They have selection criteria. They understand that their expertise is valuable precisely because it's not available to everyone at all times. In leadership, the manager who has an open-door policy for every minor issue soon finds their authority diminished, not because they're helpful, but because they've trained their team to see them as reactive rather than proactive, as available for problems rather than focused on solutions. The psychological mechanism behind this is what researchers call the scarcity principle. We assign greater value to things that are rare or difficult to obtain, but more than that, we respect people who demonstrate through their actions that they value their own time and energy. When someone treats their attention as precious, we unconsciously begin to see it as precious too. Machiavelli observed that fear and love are both powerful motivators, but if you had to choose one, fear is more reliable. This sounds harsh until you understand what he meant by fear. He wasn't talking about terror or intimidation. He was talking about the fear of loss, the fear of missing out, the fear of not being chosen. When you make yourself constantly available, you eliminate this dynamic entirely. Strategic unavailability creates what psychologists call intermittent reinforcement. This is the most powerful form of behavioral conditioning known to science. It's the psychological principle behind everything from gambling addiction to social media engagement. When rewards come unpredictably and require effort to obtain, they become infinitely more compelling than rewards that are always available. But here's the crucial distinction that separates manipulation from authentic power. Strategic unavailability must be rooted in genuine priorities, not artificial scarcity. You can't fake this effectively long term. People can sense when someone is playing games versus when someone is genuinely committed to something important. The most magnetic people aren't those who withdraw out of calculation, but those who are so engaged with their own mission that they naturally become selective about interruptions. They're not avoiding people. They're protecting something valuable. They're not playing hard to get. They're hard to get because they're genuinely busy creating something meaningful. Machiavelli understood that power is as much about perception as reality. The prince who appears to have unlimited time for every petty concern will be seen as having no important affairs to manage. The prince who must be approached with care and consideration will be seen as someone whose time is valuable because their responsibilities are significant. This principle extends beyond individual relationships to how you present yourself professionally and socially. When you're always the first to respond, always available for last-minute plans, always willing to drop everything for others, you train people to see you as having nothing more important to do. The paradox is that the more unavailable you become, the more people want your availability. The more selective you are with your time, the more valuable that time becomes to others. The higher your standards for engagement, the more people will elevate their own behavior to meet those standards. But strategic unavailability isn't just about external perception. It's about internal reality. When you protect your time and energy, you actually have more to give when you do choose to engage. Your interactions become more meaningful because they're more intentional. Your presence becomes more powerful because it's more rare. Machiavelli wrote that it's better to be respected than loved, but ideally you want both. Strategic unavailability helps you achieve both. When people have to earn your attention, they value it more when they receive it. When your time is scarce, people appreciate it more when you choose to share it with them. The key is calibration. Too much availability and you become taken for granted. Too little and you become irrelevant. The art lies in finding the sweet spot where you're accessible enough to maintain relationships, but unavailable enough to maintain respect. This isn't about being calculating or manipulative. It's about being intentional. It's about understanding that your time and energy are finite resources that should be invested wisely. It's about recognizing that saying yes to everything means saying no to the things that matter most. The most successful people in any field understand this intuitively. They don't try to be everything to everyone. They don't make themselves available for every opportunity or request. They understand that their power comes not from how much they can do, but from how carefully they choose what to do. Machiavelli's insights about strategic unavailability remain as relevant today as they were 5 centuries ago. In our hyper-connected world, where everyone expects immediate responses and constant accessibility, the person who maintains boundaries around their time and attention stands out even more dramatically. The question isn't whether this principle works. Human psychology hasn't changed in 500 years. The question is whether you have the discipline to apply it consistently, even when it feels uncomfortable, even when it goes against your natural instincts to please and accommodate. Strategic unavailability requires confidence in your own value. It requires the belief that your time and energy are precious resources worth protecting. It requires the understanding that by making yourself less available, you don't become less valuable, you become more valuable. Most importantly, it requires the wisdom to know that this isn't about withholding yourself from the world, but about being more intentional in how you engage with it. But here's where things get really interesting. The moment you start practicing strategic unavailability, you'll notice something profound happening in your interactions. People begin to respond differently to you. Your words carry more weight. Your presence commands attention. Your opinions are sought after rather than dismissed. This isn't manipulation or game playing. This is the natural consequence of becoming someone who values their own time and energy enough to protect it. Think about the most influential people you know. They don't respond to every text within minutes. They don't attend every social gathering. They don't make themselves available to everyone at all times. They understand that their attention is a finite resource, and they allocate it strategically. This isn't because they're cold or calculating. It's because they recognize that their time and energy are valuable, and they treat them accordingly. The business world provides countless examples of this principle in action. Consider how the most successful entrepreneurs operate. They don't take every meeting. They don't answer every email immediately. They don't make themselves available to every opportunity that comes their way. Instead, they focus on what matters most, and this focus creates a natural scarcity that makes others value their time more highly. Steve Jobs was notorious for this. He would disappear for weeks at a time, working on projects in complete isolation. When he emerged, people hung on his every word. His unavailability wasn't a weakness. It was a source of strength. It allowed him to focus deeply on what mattered most, and it made his eventual presence all the more powerful. The same principle applies in personal relationships. The people who are most attractive, most desired, most respected are those who have a life outside of any single relationship. They have interests, passions, and commitments that exist independently of their romantic partnerships or friendships. This isn't about being distant or uncommitted. It's about being whole as an individual, which paradoxically makes you more valuable as a partner or friend. Machiavelli understood this intuitively. He observed that the most powerful leaders were those who could not be taken for granted. They were predictable in their principles, but unpredictable in their availability. They were reliable when it mattered, but scarce enough to maintain their mystique. This balance between accessibility and scarcity is what creates true influence. The psychology behind this is fascinating. When someone is always available, we unconsciously devalue them. We assume that if they have time for us at any moment, they must not have anything better to do. Conversely, when someone is selectively available, we assume they must be important, busy with meaningful work, or in demand by others. This assumption makes us value their time more highly and, by extension, value them more highly. But here's the crucial distinction that separates strategic unavailability from mere game playing. The goal isn't to create artificial scarcity for its own sake. The goal is to become genuinely valuable, genuinely busy with meaningful work, genuinely committed to your own growth and development. When you do this authentically, the scarcity becomes real, not manufactured. This means saying no to opportunities that don't align with your values or goals. It means declining invitations to events that don't serve your purpose. It means being selective about the projects you take on, the people you spend time with, and the commitments you make. It means having standards and maintaining them consistently. The challenge is that this requires tremendous self-awareness and discipline. You must know what you value, what you're working toward, and what deserves your time and attention. You must be willing to disappoint people in the short term in order to build something meaningful in the long term. You must resist the immediate gratification of being needed and liked by everyone in favor of the deeper satisfaction of being respected and valued by the right people. This is where many people stumble. They understand the concept intellectually, but they lack the emotional strength to implement it. They're so hungry for approval, so afraid of missing out, so desperate to be included, that they make themselves available to everyone and everything. They say yes when they should say no. They compromise their standards to avoid conflict. They scatter their energy across 1,000 different directions instead of focusing it on what matters most. The antidote to this is developing what Machiavelli would call inner sovereignty. This is the ability to govern yourself according to your own principles rather than being swayed by external pressures. It's the strength to stand alone when necessary, to disappoint others when your values require it, and to maintain your standards even when it's inconvenient. This inner sovereignty manifests in countless small ways throughout your daily life. It's the ability to let a phone call go to voicemail when you're focused on important work. It's the discipline to maintain your workout schedule even when friends want to go out. It's the strength to say no to a social obligation when you need time for reflection or rest. It's the wisdom to recognize that not every opportunity is worth pursuing, not every invitation is worth accepting, and not every relationship is worth maintaining. The results of this approach are profound and far-reaching. When you become selectively available, people begin to treat your time as precious. They prepare more thoroughly for meetings with you. They think carefully before reaching out to you. They value the time you do spend with them more highly. Your opinions carry more weight because people know you don't share them carelessly. Your presence becomes more impactful because it's not taken for granted. This creates a positive feedback loop. As people begin to value your time more highly, you become more selective about how you spend it. As you become more selective, you become more valuable. As you become more valuable, you attract better opportunities, higher quality relationships, and more meaningful work. This upward spiral is the essence of strategic unavailability. But perhaps the most important benefit is internal. When you practice strategic unavailability, you develop a stronger sense of self. You become more aware of your values, your goals, and your priorities. You learn to trust your own judgment about what deserves your time and attention. You develop the confidence that comes from knowing you can say no when necessary. You discover that your worth isn't dependent on being needed by everyone, but on being valuable to the right people. This is the deeper wisdom that Machiavelli was pointing toward. True power doesn't come from making yourself indispensable to everyone. It comes from making yourself genuinely valuable to the people who matter most. It comes from focusing your energy on what truly matters rather than scattering it across 1,000 different directions. It comes from understanding that your time, attention, and energy are finite resources that must be allocated strategically. The path forward requires both inner work and outer action. You must develop the self-awareness to know what you truly value and the discipline to act on that knowledge consistently. You must build the emotional strength to disappoint others when necessary and the wisdom to recognize which opportunities are worth pursuing. You must learn to see your unavailability not as a limitation, but as a source of power. This is the art of strategic unavailability. It's not about being difficult or playing games. It's about recognizing your own value and protecting it fiercely. It's about understanding that true influence comes not from being available to everyone, but from being genuinely valuable to the right people. But here's where Machiavelli's insight reaches its most profound application. The mastery of strategic unavailability doesn't just transform how others perceive you. It fundamentally transforms how you perceive yourself. When you learn to step back from the endless demands for your attention, when you create space between stimulus and response, you begin to inhabit your own life differently. You stop being a reactive force, constantly pulled in every direction by external pressures, and you become a centered presence that responds from choice rather than compulsion. This internal shift is where the real power lies. Marcus Aurelius understood this when he wrote about the fortress of the mind, that unassailable inner citadel that remains yours regardless of external circumstances. When you practice strategic unavailability, you're not just managing your calendar or protecting your time, you're cultivating what the Stoics called inner sovereignty. You're developing the capacity to remain unmoved by the chaos around you while still engaging meaningfully with the world. The practical implications of this transformation ripple through every aspect of your existence. Your decision-making becomes clearer because you're no longer operating from a place of scarcity or desperation. When someone makes you an offer, when an opportunity presents itself, when a relationship demands something from you, you can evaluate these situations from a place of abundance rather than need. You can ask yourself, does this align with my values? Does this serve my deeper purpose? Is this the best use of my energy and attention? This clarity becomes your competitive advantage in a world where most people are drowning in options and overwhelmed by possibilities. While others are saying yes to everything and achieving nothing of significance, you're saying no to the good so you can say yes to the great. While they're exhausting themselves trying to please everyone, you're conserving your energy for the relationships and projects that truly matter. But the deepest transformation happens in how you relate to yourself. When you stop being constantly available to others, you become available to your own inner voice. In those moments of solitude that strategic unavailability creates, you begin to hear the whispers of your authentic self. The part of you that knows what you really want, what you truly value, what you're actually called to do in this world. This is why Machiavelli's principle transcends mere strategy and enters the realm of wisdom. It's not just about gaining power over others, it's about reclaiming power over your own life. It's about becoming the author of your own story, rather than a character in everyone else's drama. When you master the art of not always being available, you create space for the most important relationship you'll ever have, the relationship with yourself. The resistance you'll face when you begin implementing this principle will be intense. People who are accustomed to having unlimited access to your time and energy will push back. They'll call you selfish, unavailable, difficult. They'll try to guilt you into returning to your old patterns of constant accessibility. This resistance is actually a sign that you're doing something right. You're disrupting systems that were designed to benefit others at your expense. Your own inner voices will resist as well. The part of you that's been conditioned to seek approval will whisper that you're being unreasonable, that you're going to miss out on opportunities, that people will stop liking you. This is the voice of scarcity, and it's lying to you. The truth is that when you become more selective with your availability, when you treat your time and attention as the precious resources they are, you actually become more valuable to others, not less. The ultimate mastery of strategic unavailability comes when it stops feeling like a strategy and starts feeling like a natural expression of your self-respect. When saying no becomes as easy as breathing. When protecting your time feels as natural as protecting your physical safety, when choosing solitude over constant stimulation becomes a preference rather than a discipline. At this level, you're no longer playing games or manipulating others. You're simply living according to your values. You're honoring the truth that your life is finite, your energy is limited, and your attention is sacred. You're acknowledging that every yes to someone else's agenda is a no to your own dreams and priorities. This is Machiavelli's final lesson. True power isn't about controlling others. It's about controlling yourself. It's about becoming so clear on who you are and what you stand for that external pressures can't knock you off course. It's about developing such a strong relationship with your own inner guidance that you don't need constant validation from others to know you're on the right path. When you master strategic unavailability, you join the ranks of those rare individuals who move through the world with quiet confidence and unshakable presence. You become someone who others naturally respect, not because you demand it, but because you command it through your actions. You become a person of substance in a world full of noise, a center of calm in a storm of chaos. The impact of not appearing available, when understood and applied with wisdom, becomes the foundation for a life lived on your own terms. It's the key to deep relationships, meaningful work, and authentic self-expression. It's how you transform from someone who reacts to life into someone who creates it. And in our hyper-connected, attention-scattered world, this ancient wisdom has never been more relevant or more necessary.